So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday we talked about some free agent wide receivers that the Lions could be looking to target in this year's free agency class. Guys like Devontae Adams, Allen Robinson, Michael Gallup, and Chris Godwin, all top tier wide receivers in the NFL that could add a huge play impact and could just add so much talent and so much production to this Detroit Lions offense. But wide receiver is not the only position that needs to be addressed this offseason. Positions like quarterback, safety, linebacker, and defensive line all need to be addressed as well. And in today's video, we are going to be going over the quarterbacks. Yes, quarterback one may be locked up for the Detroit Lions, but backup quarterback is still very much up in the air. Tim Boyle, the backup quarterback that started 3 games for the Detroit Lions a season ago, didn't look very good in competition, and third-string quarterback David Blau never really got a chance. And when he did play against the Eagles, he only, I believe, completed 1 pass and was sacked 1 time. He didn't show anything in the 2021 season, and Tim Boyle showed enough to know that he is not worth bringing back as the quarterback. So with that being the case, the Lions are in the market for a new backup quarterback, and today that is the position that we are going to be talking about. I have 3 quarterbacks on this list. All have had starting time in the NFL, have all started games and won football games in the NFL. Guys that have traits and guys that have abilities to win you football games, if not even be a full-time starter in the NFL in the right situation and in the right circumstance, and guys that are young enough to be the backup quarterback here for a very long time. So with that being said, and without any further ado, let's get into the very first quarterback on this list, and a guy that we've talked about before in quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. Now, Dwayne Haskins is a guy that a lot of people weren't happy with in the mock offseason. They said that, he is not the right fit for quarterback. They said that he's got off the field issues. They said that he's not developed. And some people just simply said he is no good. And to that, I just say that is recency bias, and that is simply untrue. Dwayne Haskins is a super young quarterback at only 25 years old. He is super young and was drafted in the 2019 NFL draft. He's only going into his 4th he's only going into his 3rd NFL season and has only really gotten a starting opportunity with 1 team, and that 1 team was arguably the most dysfunctional team in the entire NFL before Ron Rivera and that coaching staff took over. And even right now, with a stable coaching staff and a long tenured head coach that's been to a Super Bowl caliber head coach, the Washington football team is still in disarray and still isn't among the NFL's top front offices, nor is it among the NFL's top franchises in the league. The Washington football team had different offensive coordinators, different offensive schemes, didn't have a lot of weapons for Dwayne Haskins to succeed, and all around, the talent around him was not sufficient enough for a young rookie quarterback to thrive, let alone show what he is capable of in the NFL. Now, Dwayne Haskins was released because of off-the-field issues and simply because the new coaching staff didn't want to be locked into a quarterback that they did not draft. So they released the former top 15 overall pick, and he was signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers not even a week after his release. Now, after training for a year under Ben Roethlisberger and with an actual coaching staff, with a top 10 head coach in the NFL, if not even a top 15 head coach all time in Mike Tomlin, and a good offensive coordinator and some good weapons, not to mention a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback to learn in front of him, Dwayne Haskins very well could have matured and could have developed a lot. You haven't heard anything about off the field issues. You haven't heard anything about him complaining complaining like he did in Washington. He's been very quiet since joining the Pittsburgh Steelers, and after learning behind a Hall of Fame quarterback and likely a Hall of Fame head coach when it's all said and done, Dwayne Haskins could have come a very, very long ways as a quarterback, as a leader, and as a football player to warrant signing him as a one-year deal to the Detroit Lions backup quarterback. Dwayne Haskins hasn't really achieved a lot in the NFL. He has started, I believe, 13 games and has 3 wins in those 13 games, so he can win you football games if you need him to step in here and there. He's not going to win you a bunch, but if it really comes down to it, Dwayne Haskins can and has won football games in the NFL before. Dwayne Haskins in his college career was electric at Ohio State. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 54 touchdowns at Ohio State in really just 1 year of starting. He had a couple backup reps his freshman year, but his sophomore year is where he really took off, throwing for 4,900 yards and 50 touchdowns through the year. And yes, Ohio State was stacked at wide receiver, but the NFL has a lot of good wide receivers as well, and Dwayne Haskins was obviously good enough to warrant taking with a top 15 pick in the 2019 NFL draft. He hasn't succeeded this far in the NFL, and I'm not saying he's going to be the franchise savior. I'm not saying he's even going to live up to a first-round quarterback, but if you're looking at backup quarterbacks, there's a lot worse talent-wise that you can do than Dwayne Haskins as your primary backup. Now, another guy that I think could be a big-time addition at the backup quarterback position is Mitch Trubisky. Now, Mitch Trubisky is a former number 2 overall pick taken in the 2017 NFL draft. He was a long-term starter for the Chicago Bears and actually had a winning record with Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears, taking them to the playoffs twice despite not winning a playoff game. Mitch Trubisky has a winning record as a starting quarterback, brings mobility and scrambling ability with his legs, brings kind of an athletic quarterback type to the Detroit Lions system, and in his career so far, Mitch Trubisky has 10,000 passing yards and 64 touchdowns. He's 29 and 21 as a starter, 29 wins, 21 losses. Again, taking the Chicago Bears to the playoffs twice and very nearly taking them to their first playoff win since the mid-2010s. He's a guy that, didn't play good. He's a guy that has accuracy issues. He's a guy that doesn't read the field very well, at least not consistently very well, but he's a guy that is a winner. He's won in the college level and he's won at the NFL level. He's a guy with 10,000 passing yards, more touchdowns than interceptions, and a guy with a winning record. He's a guy that is mobile, brings mobility to the quarterbacking position, and is a guy that just on broken plays can get the job done. There's a reason he went to Buffalo, and there's a reason Buffalo, a true Super Bowl contender, wanted him as the backup quarterback, because if Josh Allen goes down, you may not find a better backup quarterback or a backup caliber quarterback like you are going to find in Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky is a good quarterback. Is he a starting elite quarterback in the NFL? No, he's not an elite quarterback in the NFL, but what he is a really high quality backup quarterback that if you need him to step in, can absolutely go in and win you football games. And who knows, Matt Nagy may have stunted Trubisky's growth more than we've ever seen, or more than we even realized, because you look at what they did with Justin Fields, somebody who is miles ahead of Mitch Trubisky on the talent tree. Justin Fields showed a lot of flash, but also looked really, really bad in certain games because of Matt Nagy's system. So who's to say that Mitch Trubisky didn't suffer from the same thing? Who's to say Mitch Trubisky looked as bad as he did because of the system that he was put in? Mitch Trubisky is not a bad quarterback. He's a bad starting quarterback, but he is not a bad quarterback, and he could be a really good backup quarterback for the Detroit Lions. And if Jared Goff gets hurt, Mitch Trubisky may even end up taking the starting job of that quarterback. Now, with the last quarterback that I wanted to talk about today, this guy is going to command a little bit more money than the first two. And this guy was a former starter, was a former number 2 overall pick, and is a guy that took his team to the playoffs as a starting quarterback, and that player is Marcus Mariota. Now, yes, these are bigger name quarterbacks, and these are quarterbacks that are going to cost a little bit more money, but I do want to just mention really quickly that the Lions have been incredibly cheap with their backup quarterbacks for a very long time, and as a result, the backup quality that they have at their quarterback position has absolutely suffered because of it. You have to spend money on your backup quarterback. Your team is only as good as its worst player, and Jared Goff may not be healthy for 17 games next year. Jared Goff might get COVID again. Jared Goff might tear his ACL in week 1. You want a guy that you have confidence that can step in for 17 games and at least keep your team on track to the point where they would have been with a starting quarterback, or at least get them close to where they would have been with a starting quarterback. All three of those guys have that. All three of those guys can do that. Marcus Mariota especially will be by far the most expensive free agent quarterback this offseason, but it would be well worth the wait. Being the second overall pick in the 2015 NFL draft and being a former starter for the Tennessee Titans for a very long time, Marcus Mariota is really, really good as a quarterback. He brings a mobile rushing attack to the Detroit Lions from that quarterback position. You're going to see it in a very similar way that the Las Vegas Raiders used him a year ago. And if he does need to step in, even last year when he threw the ball, he didn't look very bad. There was a game where Derek Carr got injured versus the Los Angeles Chargers, I believe, and Marcus Mariota stepped up big and came in and played a really, really good game versus a really talented Chargers defense. Now, Marcus Mariota in his career has over 13,000 passing yards and 77 passing touchdowns to go along with his 1,500 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. He's a guy that took Tennessee to the playoffs for the first time in a very, very long time, upset the Kansas City Chiefs, and played against Tom Brady and the Patriots in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's a guy that just is a winner. He's a guy that wins football games for his team. Was beat out by Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill, especially in the regular season and especially at the end of that 2019 season, looked really, really good, and at points throughout his career has been a borderline top 10, top 15 quarterback in the NFL, and the Titans felt like they were better off with Tannehill than Mariota, but that doesn't mean that Mariota's a bad quarterback. He's won games in the NFL. He's thrown some really nice touchdowns. He's thrown game-winning touchdowns. He's taken his team on game-winning drives. He's taken his team to the playoffs and won playoff games, and that's something that no Detroit Lions quarterback can say since the early 90s. So, yes, Marcus Mariota may be expensive, but the Lions have nearly $40 million in cap space, almost $50 million in cap space if you factor in that they will likely trade or release Trey Flowers on June 1st. Marcus Mariota would not be that expensive and would not be that backbreaking to the cap situation to make the argument that talent-wise, the talent doesn't make up for the contract. So with that being said, Marcus Mariota, I think, should be the top target. He is the best free agent quarterback, and I think he would be the best option for the Detroit Lions. He would be the best backup quarterback available and could even bring an element of the quarterback rushing attack to this Lions team that they haven't seen maybe ever. So with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about these backup quarterbacks. What other backup quarterbacks could you be looking at in free agency? Another guy that I really like is Kyle Allen. 7-10 as a starter, has more touchdowns than interceptions, and again has 7 wins as a starting quarterback in his NFL career. That's another guy that I really like, but those are my top 4 candidates right now for the Detroit Lions. With all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your guys' opinions down in the comments below of who the Detroit Lions should sign as the backup quarterback. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!